Joining now, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. I would just want to begin by saying thank you. It's your constant alerts to my family that got us to evacuate and evacuate early, and I really appreciate that. It was inside information. The Congresswoman has probably been the first and foremost out front on social media saying it's time to take your safety into your own hands now. Thank you, Congresswoman.
I appreciate it. Yeah, honestly, it's good that you guys left when you did, though, too, because as you're seeing now, a lot of people are trying to get out, and it's a little bit chaotic right now. So
really important to follow members of Congress and people who you know are trustworthy, who are inside of these briefings. I know you are putting up an enormous amount of information on your social media handles, along with your website and so on, for resources for people in Pinellas County and the surrounding areas.
yeah, I think it's important to know that a lot of people, because of the fact that Tampa Bay hasn't been hit direct head on, I think since the last 100 years by something like this. And then with what just happened with Helene, there was kind of this hurricane fatigue. It won't happen again. But again, what we're finding is, Helene was not a direct hit. It was literally over 100 miles off the coast. And we still had some horrible, horrible damage, and over 12 people died in my county. But now we're finding this next hurricane is basically going to be catastrophic. I don't see any situations or scenarios where people who don't evacuate can survive this. What I'm being told currently is that we're expecting at least 15 feet of flooding. That's including some of the storm surge, but I mean, I think it's going to be worse. There's also a ton of debris. And if you look at the maps that I've been posting, it's basically going to turn Pinellas County into two islands, and we're hearing that the bridges could possibly go down, that structures on the barrier islands, if they're multifamily or multi-story high rises, that those could go down. So it's not a good situation. And really late last night, I made the decision with my husband that our home personally would not be able to withstand those Cat 3 winds, and so we actually made the decision to evacuate.
Yeah, I think that is the wise decision, especially if you have little children. You have little children. I mean, no matter what, right? But if you're able-bodied, especially if you are in charge of a household and you have little kids who are dependents on you, you have to get out. What would be your advice right now, given everything that you know up to date? We are about 24 hours before this hurricane makes landfall. Based on all of the available briefings that you have, your advice to the people from your congressional district in the greater Tampa area.
Yeah, I think that if you are in Pinellas County, I think that you should leave no matter what. I think that we're going to see at least power for probably a week. If those bridges go down, it's not likely that supplies will be able to get in. Obviously, we're ready to respond. DeSantis has done an incredible job with organizing the National Guard out of Tropicana Field and has over 500 ambulances staged there to respond. But again, I mean, we just haven't seen something like this in over 100 years. So I would tell you, your life, you can't put a price on that. Anything else can be replaced. I know a lot of people might also be financially struggling right now. So what I would say is if you cannot evacuate, several hours away, that you can go east of 75. If you go east of 75, at least 10 miles inland, you should be okay. There's still going to be those incredibly strong winds. I know that right now, I think it's projected to make landfall at 125 miles an hour for winds. But again, I think the motto that people should remember is you run from water and you shelter from wind. And that's what we're seeing right now. But, I think DeSantis has a handle on it. His team has been incredible. We've been in constant contact with them, as well as FEMA, and also to our local Pinellas County EOC. But it's not going to be good. And I really hope that people, especially if you have older family members, if you have neighbors that are older, check on them and make sure that they can leave. Because what we saw last time in a lot of those casualties was, people didn't want to be burdens on their loved ones, and they did not evacuate, and they drowned as a result of that.
Wow. So it was remarkable. We just drove 7 hours north. I cannot say it enough, and I say it profoundly, and it's selfish to take this moment to say it, but thank you for warning us. You should follow the Congresswoman on social media. We say it every single hit. Follow her on social media. These members of Congress who are privy to this information and these briefings, they tell you what to do. Get out. Follow the people who you can trust. The Congresswoman here has been saying it for days. You've been on this for a week at least, warning about this exact storm.
Yeah, since Helene happened, once we got the initial models and we saw it starting to form, I actually talked to the state of Florida directly. Actually, that was on it, I think, even before any other federal agency was. And then I yesterday just talked to the director of the National Hurricane Center. So yeah, it's important that people pay attention, but social media is such a powerful tool to be able to communicate with people, even if it's sharing resources, information. What I will say is if you can't leave Pinellas County, go to pinellas.gov. There are shelters that are open, and there are also shelters that will take animals. So a lot of people didn't want to go to shelters because they didn't want to leave their pets. We have those available. There's also ride sharing apps that are offering rides in the event that you have to evacuate to a shelter. So I share that information as well. But this is, something that you should not just take for granted. This is very serious, very deadly. And I would advise you take what you can and leave. Worst case scenario, you might not have a home, but you're going to have your life. Best case scenario is you evac for a little bit. You can go back home and everything's going to be okay. But I just don't think that, based on what I'm hearing right now, that that's going to be the case. I think that this is going to be pretty bad.
So as we were driving up north, thanks again for warning us. As I was taking my family yesterday up north, we left at 5 a.m. I saw nothing but military vehicles, linemen, and heavy movers heading south. That was about it. But it was comforting to see that the state actually taking action before disasters and devastation. Based on your most up-to-date briefings, what is the expectation for this storm? Is it going to be as catastrophic as it looks?
Yeah, I think anywhere near Tampa Bay. I mean, it's looking like it might hit Sarasota now, but even just being that close to it, it's going to be Cat 3 would be devastating. Cat 4 would be catastrophic. And I'm not in the game of hoping that something slows down. Right now, it's a Cat 5 slowing down to a Cat 4. I mean, that's the magnitude that we haven't seen. It's the fourth strongest hurricane in the history of the Gulf. And I will say this, right now, what we're finding too, especially with some of this FEMA aid, is that it's run out. And we're also finding that it went to pay for illegals, people that didn't pay into the system. Meanwhile, people in my county have already lost their lives and they're about to lose everything. Whatever was remaining, we just got hit with a hurricane, less than 10 days ago. We have now this happening. It's simply unacceptable. And so I'm really, really happy with Governor DeSantis's leadership. I think he's done an incredible job. And, for Kamala to take this time to make it political, now is not the time. Cut the bullshit. This is not the time.
It's grotesque as we look through the interviews that have been given DeSantis and Kamala. It's really, there's no other way to say it. It's a grotesque, cringy attempt to say that you're in charge when she really does have no role here. And she has, based on what DeSantis has said, never offered to do anything or help in any other storm. And now that she's running for office in a failed and failing campaign, she's attempting to take advantage of people's suffering to say that she's in charge. That is the lowest possible form of electioneering and grifting off of people's pain. It seems to us.
Most certainly. In fact, I'm no fan of Joe Biden, but Joe Biden has worked with DeSantis on a number of natural disasters and even talked with him recently about this next incoming natural disaster that we're going to have. I was at briefings just 2 days ago with Kathy Castor, who's a Democrat, Senator Rick Scott, and a number of other elected officials in the Tampa Bay region. So, you have the bipartisan support locally and at the state level and even at the White House, but it is evident that Kamala Harris did try to make this political. And I would just go back to say this, right now, a lot of people in my community are furious at the fact that they might not get their homes covered. And then you have her saying, we'll offer you $750. Meanwhile, literally 1.01 billion has gone to illegals. And so I think that it's important to know and for people to really pay attention. Benny, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to go home and have a home. And I'm not the only person. There's a lot of people in Pinellas and in Tampa Bay who are anticipating that they might not go back to anything, to, I think, include you. And so we don't know what's going to happen. We're, weeks out from a national election, but I think this needs to be the time where people realize, you want people in positions that have your interests, that are with you, that are on the ground, understanding things. And so I will say that, Kamala's response to all of this, not just in Florida, but I think in Georgia, as well as North Carolina, I think that speaks volumes, and people really need to decide, who they want to rely on in times of crisis. And we are absolutely in a crisis right now.
So let's talk really briefly about what's happening in Asheville and Hurricane Helene and the devastation from Asheville to your district. Okay, so let's take that entire swath. There are millions of Americans without power, hundreds of thousands without clean water or food to eat. And Kamala Harris has grudgingly offered them $750, and FEMA is now groveling and bitching that they don't have any money. They did spend that money on criminal aliens. They did spend that money on a resettlement program. And so they are prioritizing criminal aliens over native-born Americans, Americans who are legally here, to their own suffering. That is currently actively happening. We don't have to assume after this storm that may happen. It's actively happening now. That's got to make your blood boil, Congresswoman.
Oh, most certainly. In fact, I actually just sent a letter to the FEMA director that you can actually pull from online. You'll find it there, and inquired on exactly how that went about. I'm a member of oversight, so we're going to be investigating this. But I think more importantly, I did actually just sponsor a bipartisan bill to get $15 billion to go directly to impacted victims, not to go to housing illegals, directly to impacted victims. We give billions of dollars to foreign countries, Ukraine, for example, and yet we have people here, $750 if you go to Publix, can't even do 2 grocery shoppings if you have a family. So what is $750 going to do if you've lost everything? I mean, it's, I don't know what to say other than I'm trying to do the best that I can, but it makes it a lot harder when you have people at the federal level who are making decisions that impact you, and they have no idea the outcome and the implications of those decisions.
I hate playing with hypotheticals here, but since there is this phone call does seem to be something that quite irritated the governor of Florida. If Kamala Harris picked up the phone and called you, what would you tell her?
I would tell her to cut the bullshit and to do her job, to get us the funding and also the support that we need, and to leave her presidential campaign alone for right now and think about the fact that people are actually being hurt by her decisions.
Yeah. I will say, if you follow the media landscape, as Americans are dying in the mud and starving and losing everything, going on Call Her Daddy, a sex podcast, to giggle about Donald Trump, it just doesn't seem serious.
Benny, I got off the phone yesterday as we were evacuating up, to where we're at currently. And we have friends that have responded that are part of the Florida State Defense Force that responded actually to Asheville to go find some of these people. And they were using cadaver dogs to find bodies. And the comment that I heard that really sticks with me, and I think people should know, is that there was nothing left of some of these people. These cadaver dogs were finding entrails of Americans. This is not a war zone. This is Asheville, North Carolina. And to have her go on at that time, and even to have her running mate, Walt, in comparison, saying that he was going to activate the Minnesota National Guard to assist in Florida, and yet you have her response that seemed so catty and so minimizing and so about her, instead of focusing on the fact that she needed to just be an adult. Even if Governor DeSantis didn't want to talk to her, whatever went on in that phone call, she still could have sent resources and let it be and not made it a political thing. And she did.
I think by definition, that means that you are unqualified for leadership when the people of your country are suffering and dying, and you use it as an opportunity to do a sex podcast and then to attack the very governor who's trying to help and the members of Congress who are trying to help.
That wasn't it. And again, DeSantis is doing amazing things. Even in Pinellas County, he was able to reallocate state resources and actually move a lot of the debris. And I believe that maneuver alone, whether or not people realize how important it was that he did that, that will save lives. Because when you have, a stove getting picked up and flying at you at potentially 140 miles an hour, that becomes basically a cannonball. It's going to kill people. And so that was a life-saving measure that he made executive decision on earlier. And I will continue to applaud his efforts. He's been incredible.
It's one of the reasons I moved my most precious the most precious thing in my life. Yeah, is my family. And I moved it to Florida because of leadership like Ron DeSantis and yourself. This is Florida first leadership, right? We want America first leadership from the federal government. I think what is on demonstration right now is America last. And in closing, Congresswoman, I want to maybe give you an opportunity. I know you're a huge supporter of President Trump, and you just moderated an event with him in North Carolina. A couple of days ago before rushing home to serve your constituency and your district. There doesn't seem to be a more clear delineation between America Last policies versus America First policies than this election right now and this current crisis moment?
Yeah, I think that we're and it's very clear based on responding to these response to these national disasters. But I think it's also more importantly that people are paying attention to what's happening from a foreign policy perspective. And when you see, people that are willing to give our resources to people who haven't paid into the system, we have people literally dying in North Carolina. People have died in my county of Pinellas. We had 12 people die. And I think based on what I'm seeing on these metrics, I think more people are going to die. And so it doesn't make me happy to have this conversation. It doesn't make me happy to have to tell people, if you do not leave, you are going to die. Like, please don't just look at us like talking heads on TV. Don't think that we're just doing these press conferences because we want the attention. This is for you guys. Get out with your life. And that's the best thing that you can do for yourself and your family. But again, you see just these problems that are impacting us that we are living. And then you see how just out of touch and not committed to the American people the current leadership is in Kamala Harris, and that's simply unacceptable. So all I will say is you guys have a very important decision to make in the next few weeks, and think about what people are doing in times of crisis. Look at their actions, not their words, and I think that you'll be led in the right direction.
Congresswoman, very briefly here at time of recording, apparently Kamala Harris just finished a hit on The View, once again doing the toughest media possible. She's on The View, and she once again blamed Ron DeSantis for not wanting help or treating her rudely. She once again played the victim on The View. She's not backing down from that, saying that Ron DeSantis is trying to make things worse here in the state of Florida. Has that been your experience?
No, Governor DeSantis has been incredible. He has been completely following up. I've been personally talking to his chief of staff on a regular basis. They are even monitoring the traffic cams out of Pinellas County. And if need be, by the time these next, I assume, evacuation orders will come through in the next few hours, if they need to, they will open up all lanes exiting Pinellas County so that people can evac. He has been incredible in leadership in response to this, and I look forward to his continued leadership in the state of Florida.
If the View were ever to invite you on, what would you have said to Kamala Harris here?
I would have told her again that she has no idea what's happening on the ground, that she has not even bothered reaching out or talking to the other elected officials. She really wanted to help out with this hurricane. Why isn't she on the phone with the Pinellas County EOC? Why isn't she talking to the sheriff in our county? Why is she not sending resources? And why is she taking time to go on a news network instead of actually coming down to Tampa, where we're actually going to be hit the hardest? I mean, I cannot emphasize this enough. Please leave. If you cannot leave and you are in a structure that is not safe, it's not rated for Cat 3 or 4. If you're in a wooden structure, I would take my family and I would go to a shelter. Those shelters can be found online on the Tampa Gov website, also Pinellas.gov website. But this is not something to take for granted. Kamala Harris has no idea what's happening here in Florida, but you do. And you can find those resources online and just make sure that you're making the correct decisions to be safe.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. It's going to be a tough couple weeks, but this is a strong state. It's Florida's strong state, and there's a lot of incredible and beautiful, wonderful Americans who live here in the state of Florida. And yeah, they have excellent leadership, and so we see the silver linings in all this. I know that Florida is going to be good. Please heed the Congresswoman's words and follow her on social media, as these updates have potentially saved my family. They've already saved my family, my personal family. My 3 children and pregnant wife have been assisted greatly by simply following the Congresswoman on social media and getting real-time updates about what's happening. I encourage you to do the same, and we're gonna stick through this thing, Congresswoman. Thank you so much for your help.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless.